right, I think we're live here. Let me turn on my comments. Check, check, check. Microphone's working. All right. What's up, guys? Let me know if you're watching, if you can hear this. Before I carry on, I've been having some technical difficulty to get my camera on and everything, so I want to make sure I'm not speaking to myself right now. Let's see. All right, I'm just going to carry on. So today I want to talk about stress. We were talking about that last week, and I want to carry on from the conversation last week and how it's a massive barrier for weight loss and performance. Last week we talked about some of the conventional strategies to hack your stress, and I think I shared a few biohacks and some of the stuff I was doing with my clients that were really helping, and some of the feedback that they were getting. But today I want to get into some of the more unconventional strategies, right? That, in my opinion, can be incredibly effective, especially when you're pressed for time, right? So let me just ask you straight up, if you're listening to this, have you ever felt that your results towards your fitness or your weight loss goals or whatever, they weren't really matching the effort that you're putting in? If that's so, then it's probably a stress. Okay. If you're not managing it, you're sabotaging your goals, essentially. Okay. So here's the thing. Traditional stress management techniques, like, deep breathing, working out in the gym every day, being really consistent in the nutrition, sleeping 8+ hours every single day, it's not always realistic, especially when you lead a busy life, right? So what can you do? That's where I think the unconventional time-saving techniques that are kind of like biohacks get results, right? And it's because chronic stress, right, it messes with our metabolism, it messes with our immune system, right? It can lead to health problems and all kinds of issues. And sometimes when you're like stressed out about fitting it all in, it's like it's too much, it's too daunting, right? And that's not really good. So you want to get the most bang for your buck. You want to go with the minimum effective dose, right? And here's the thing: if you are dealing with that, if you are, if your cortisol levels are out of whack, essentially, then your metabolism's screwed up, your immune system's screwed up, like I said, and all of that. It makes it damn hard to lose weight, right? Especially around the gut area. If you're carrying in a few extra pounds around the gut and it's kind of accumulating in that area, especially for you guys, your cortisol is whacked out. It's very likely that your cortisol is whacked out, right? That's where we carry fat when our cortisol's chronically elevated all the time, right? So if that's you, don't worry, I got you. Okay. I'm going to share a few of the unconventional techniques that have really helped some of my clients manage stress and achieve their weight loss goals, even after being at like plateaus for weeks on end, essentially, right? And I've got real-time data to back it up as well, right? A lot of my clients, they wear self-quantifying devices like the Whoop or the Oura Ring. They've got blood work done, before and after snapshots of blood work, even CGMs, continuous glucose monitors, to actually show like improvements in insulin sensitivity. So, I've had the privilege of working with some really, really cool guys that have, stepped up and really wanted to take that type of approach. And we've gotten to see what works and what doesn't. Okay. So that's what I want to share with you today. And it's cool because a lot of these things are also the things that are the most doable, right? They're the most doable from a standpoint of how efficient they are and how they don't really require a lot of time. Okay. So let's get into it. Just to give it to you straight before we even get started, I'm going to be talking about cold exposure. I'm going to be talking about intermittent fasting. And I'm going to be talking about mindset training and how those are actually the most efficacious things, in my opinion. And they don't require extra time, right? And that's why they're so powerful. Excuse me. Okay. So that might sound kind of crazy to some of you. Some of you have probably seen some of the ice bath stuff and, are familiar with, mindset training and some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. But trust me, they work, right? And like I said, I've got tons of data, real-time data, blood work results, continuous glucose monitor results, Oura rings, the Whoop. These are all things that I've seen people use that I've been working with, and basically before and after shots of all kinds of improvements after implementing these techniques. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's start out by just the macro lens and look at the bigger picture. The real reason why these techniques work is that what they do is they help add intentional stress and thus reduce overall systemic stress, right? And it's mainly about helping the body adapt to stress rather than just eliminating all stress altogether, because that's not possible for most of us in this day and age, right? And it might sound counterintuitive to be adding in stress, but by intentionally exposing ourselves to mild stressors like cold, fasting, right? Short, intense, efficient workouts, right? That get our heart rate up real quick, and then we work on bringing that down so we can improve our heart rate variability, the number one metric that, determines our length of life pretty much, right? Things like that. What they do is intentional stress helps you go from sympathetic to parasympathetic and kind of turn off faster, right? Especially when we're dealing with a lot of chronic stress that's mostly mental from our lifestyles and our jobs. Okay. So it's an instant state change, and it helps you by stressing yourself a little bit out with the workouts and the cold and these types of things. You then are able to de-stress faster. That's basically what it is. Okay. That's what it's all about. So it's not about just completely eliminating stress, right? And just being a hippie smoking blunts on the beach, right? That's probably not going to help you anyways, right? It's about building resilience to stress. Okay. So let's get into the first one. You've probably seen it. Maybe it's not even unconventional at this point, but cold exposure, right? Now, you're probably thinking like, okay, well, what the hell does this have to do with stress, right? Just hear me out. Again, exposing your body to cold temperatures, right? Whether that's through a cold shower or you're taking ice baths, like I like to do a couple times a week. Some people, buy a whole freezers that they just fill up with water. I was thinking about doing that as well. Whatever it is, right? What it does is it basically activates your sympathetic nervous system, which then again helps your body to adapt to the stress, right? And if you can learn how to relax in that situation through breath work, then you're going to be more and more adapted for stress, right? There was another interesting study. I need to pinpoint it and find it, but it was basically studying people who didn't have the fear gene, like the guy who climbed El Capitan, right? And other people like him. And they were what they do is they use CO2, right? And they've done this with rats as well, but it basically induces anxiety, right? And so what they wanted to find out was like, okay, well, these people that don't have the fear gene, essentially, will they still experience anxiety from CO2? Turns out they did, right? They also took a group of people who were Wim Hof practitioners, right? They did cold therapy and the Wim Hof technique. And they found out that they actually, when the CO2 hit them, they actually, instead of getting anxiety, they got euphoria. They would actually relax deeper, and they kept hitting the button for more CO2, right? So it's the same stressor that they're experiencing, but their body just is totally adapted to it, right? And it almost chooses to relax as soon as it's exposed to the stressor, right? So that's, for me, the main reason why it's helpful, right? That's also kind of a mindset thing, right? If you get that win and you kind of push through the cold, it's like, what's that going to lead to throughout the rest of the day? But it also has a lot to do with cortisol as well, right? So it's just like a net benefit, right? Plus, it increases, production of brown adipose tissue, which helps burn white fat, right? Um, it's also, it improves mood, reduces inflammation, it increases testosterone levels massively. Actually, it's one of the most effective implements for increasing testosterone in guys. Um, so it's just incredible, right? It also just completely disposes of glucose in the body for like hours after the cold exposure, right? So if you're feeling stressed, if you feel like your efforts in your diet and your workouts are not being, you're not getting the result that backs up that effort up, consider just adding this into your day, right? And you don't have to go full Spartan mode and get an ice bath right away. Do it if you want to. I think that's cool. And there is a benefit to having colder water, right? Closer to freezing water. But cold showers are just as effective too, right? You just might have to stay in a little bit longer and just see what happens. When I started doing this, it was like a month in, right? I mean, right instantly you get that instant state change where you're just firing on all cylinders and you're like, all right, I'm ready to tackle the day. But about a month in, I really started noticing a lot of biofeedback, more energy, just like more chilled out, like able to switch off after work. And I'm pretty sure that it helped with testosterone as well. Okay, so give it a try. Okay, so the second technique that I wanted to share with you is intermittent fasting. Okay. Now, before you roll your eyes and you say, all right, not another fad diet, right? Just hear me out with this, okay? Because the benefits are tenfold, in my opinion, right? And I've been doing this dieting game for a long time. I've tried all the diets, I've done it all, right? Intermittent fasting isn't about starving yourself, right? It's just about timing your meals strategically to give your body time to rest and recover, okay? When you fast, your body goes into a state of autophagy, which is like spring cleaning for your cells, right? It helps get rid of damaged cells that can be problematic for your health and tissues, and then it promotes the growth of new healthy cells, essentially. Okay, so it's been studied for longevity purposes for quite a while now. Just any fasting protocol in general, right? And also intermittent fasting has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, right? And I say this all the time. I say it in my webinar for the fat loss framework, but there's two requirements for fat loss to occur, right? Low blood lipids and low blood glucose. It has to happen for you to burn fat, okay? So anything that helps with insulin sensitivity is going to help you burn fat, okay? It's crucial, in fact, for weight loss and overall health as well. Okay, there's a study, what was it, published by the Journal of Cell Metabolism, and they found that intermittent fasting can improve insulin sensitivity and lower overall blood sugar levels. Right. I think the study showed participants who they followed. I think it was a 16-8. I think it was a 16-8 intermittent fasting regimen. And I think it was only like 5 or 6 weeks, right? And they had pretty substantial improvements to their insulin sensitivity, right? And that was even when they weren't necessarily controlling macronutrients, right? They still had like some sugary, carbohydrate-rich meals and that sort of thing, right? So if you feel like, again, your efforts aren't really, your results aren't being matched by your efforts, then that could be another thing to look at. This is the nuance in dieting, right? This is the nuance. It goes beyond just calories in versus calories out, right? And the reality is that if you're over 16% body fat, you probably have some degree to insulin resistance, right? That doesn't mean that you're diabetic or pre-diabetic or anywhere near that. But if you want to be optimal, right? If you want to respond to the diet better and have it be as easy as possible, then it's worth exploring, right? And intermittent fasting is just a simple tool to do that. Okay. Make sure, consult your healthcare professional. I'm not a doctor. Oh yeah, one of the other things that it helps with is inflammation, right? Another key factor in stress management, right? Anything you can do to get that cortisol down is going to make things a lot easier in the long run. Okay. And like I said, I've been doing this for a while now. I've been on and off diets for the last 15 years, and I've tried everything. And in my opinion, intermittent fasting is just one of the easiest and most simple ways to restrict your calories. That's it. All right. The law of thermodynamics is still the most important thing when it comes to reducing your body fat levels and building muscle. Okay. And let's face it, counting calories can be a pain in the ass sometimes, right? It's time consuming. It's hard to get in the habit of doing it, and it's you kind of bore the line of neurosis when you're doing it consistently all the time, right? I think there's merit to it, and everyone should do it at least once in their life, especially with the scrutiny of like looking at it with an expert. I think that's incredibly helpful. But do it, get that insight, and then get out and develop that sustainable plan that keeps you in that ballpark, right? That's why I like intermittent fasting, right? It's just simple, right? You're just limiting your eating window, right? It's also flexible, right? You can choose different protocols to see what works best for you. You can do the 16-8, or you can even do a 24-hour fast once a week, or eat, stop, eat, whatever it is that works best for you, your schedule, your biology, all of that, right? But it really is about giving your body that time to rest and recover, right? And you might find from doing that, what I've found and what I see a lot of people who do this find is that you actually start to feel more energy, more focus during those fasting periods. Okay. That's not to say it's a magic bullet, right? It's still important to focus on, nutrient dense foods, staying hydrated, paying attention to your macros, getting enough protein is the biggest one that makes this all much, much easier, in overall calorie restriction, right? Cutting out the snacks and the junk that you know is like the low hanging fruit that you don't need. Okay. So that's number 2. Okay. We've talked about cold exposure and intermittent fasting so far as ways to add intentional stress so that you can lower your overall systemic stress and build resilience. Okay. The last one I want to talk to you about, and in my opinion, this is the most important tool in your arsenal for combating stress. And that's mindset. That's your thinker. That's what's going on 6 inches between the ears, right? Okay. Little woo-woo, I know. The data backs me up on this one, though. So stick with me, okay? When it comes to stress, our mindset is what really makes the difference, right? And there's a study published by the Journal of Psychoneuroendocrinology. It's a mouthful. And they found that people who view stress as harmful to their health are at higher risk for premature death. Okay. And on the other hand, people who view stress as a normal part of life, and it's just like expected, right? It's not a big deal. They don't make a big deal out of it. They actually have more resilience to it, right? And they experience less negative health effects overall, right? And there's another famous TEDx where they talked about this, and I think they used another study as well, where basically researchers just took a huge population of people who were, self-proclaimed stressed out people, right? And then they just simply ask them 2 questions. Do you view stress as something that's harmful to your health or not, right? The people who viewed it as harmful ended up being way they had like way more like consequences of being stressed out, right? I think they measured some of their health markers and stuff, and basically they were just unhealthy and not as happy, right? The people who saw it as a necessary part of life and just like didn't see it as an issue were healthier overall, much happier. So that's why I say, like, yeah, it's a bit woo, but it's the truth. This really makes the difference when it comes to the cortisol response. Okay, stress. So how can we take advantage of that? How can we develop and cultivate that type of mindset? Here's just a few tips, and don't worry about writing these down. What I'm going to do is every Saturday, guys, I'm going to be dropping an article in my newsletter where I'm going to kind of give you the in-depth approach and the step-by-step things that you can do with, links to whatever I, talk about. And it's like here's the game plan basically for everything that I talk about in these lives. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'm going to drop a link to that in the bottom of the comments here. Or if you want to get a hold of that, reach out to me or just sign up in the comments there. But let me just give you a few take you can start implementing right away. These are the ones that I've seen the biggest improvements with for myself and some of the clients that I've worked with. Gratitude. Okay. Taking time each day to reflect on what you're thankful for, and just shift your focus away from like the fear mode to, okay, this is what I have that I can be thankful for, right? That's like the quickest way to turn that stress response off. Okay. Reframing challenges as opportunities, right? Everyone wants to set goals, but rarely anybody ever challenges their associations to failures, right? And where they came up short in the past. So instead of viewing stressors as threats to your health, try to see them as chances to grow, to build resilience, to learn. Okay. Powerful stuff, right? I've seen people do this as a journal practice, and it just completely shifts their thinking and thus their physiology, right? You can change your physiology by changing your psychology. And the same is true in reverse, right? And again, the data backs me up on this. Overall, just mindfulness and awareness, right? So maybe that's meditation, maybe that's journaling, maybe that's just thinking time, right? That's what I like. At the end of my day, I like to just sit there and think for 20 minutes, and I actually time block it, right? That's been shown to greatly reduce stress and just improve overall clarity of thought, focus, and well-being. Okay. Big one is community, connecting with others, family, like real connection with your significant other, any kind of social support, right? Getting into groups like the Facebook group, guys. I mean, the more community, the more people that are rowing in the same direction, the more elevating conversations that you involve yourself with, the easier it's going to be, right? And the more it's going to kind of elevate your outlook. Okay. But really making time for friends and family, sharing meals with people you love, joining communities, those type of things. Okay. And then lastly, getting help when you need it, right? If you're struggling with chronic stress, or if it's a mental health issue, definitely reach out for help. Don't be afraid to seek professional help, whether it's a therapist or a coach or friend or whatever. That is the most important thing that you can do for yourself. Okay. All right. So that's it for today. Again, cold exposure, intermittent fasting, and then really the mindset. That's, in my opinion, those are the three things that have the most data behind them that a lot of people aren't really talking about, right? Everyone knows you got to exercise, you got to get enough sleep. And look, those things are really important, and you want to try to do your best and develop a foundation there. But in my opinion, these three areas are the ones that really, really move the needle. And again, I've got the data to back that up. So I'm going to quickly get into a little Q&A. Where did I put my phone? Well, I'll do it right here. Had a few questions in the Facebook group. Let me just pull that up. I saw Perry asked a question about shoulders, and then we'll just wrap this up. And again, guys, with everything that I discussed today, if you want to dive in deeper and you want to get some of the step-by-step approaches, or I often like to share, tools and gadgets that have been really helpful for clients that I've been working with. I drop an article following these lives every Saturday. I'm going to drop that one tonight. Usually they get dropped every Saturday morning, but I took the day off yesterday because the surf was firing. So I'll get that done tonight, and that's going to be the in-depth approach to what we talked about today. So If you do have any questions in the comments, please let me know. Try to be specific, and I'll do my best to answer your question fully. And then I'm going to answer Perry's question here. I think I saw something about shoulder pain. Yeah, so Perry said, I keep injuring my shoulder lately during strength workouts. I've let it heal till it doesn't hurt at all, and then giving it another week before resuming workouts. Even then, going really gentle, barely pushing, but I get injured over and over again. Okay. What type of strategies do you implement for working with around injuries? How do you determine when to push through versus doing something else? I love this question, by the way, Bryn. If you're listening to this, man, thanks for the specificity, because yeah, we can really get into this. I can really get into this question. So yeah, and then I think I asked you a follow-up question in the group too, just to see what we got going. So I'm going to read this last comment here. My pressing movements, mostly push-up variations. You're doing overhead presses. You're doing pike push-ups, rows on the rings. Your back seems to be taking a hit. Thinking it will get better with strength. Okay. Balances. Yeah. So I kind of answered it already, right? I mentioned, how without knowing more information, what I can say from my experience is that nearly every injury that I've dealt with is generally the result of an imbalance somewhere in the body, right? You also mentioned you're a side sleeper. Those are the two big things where I instantly went, was like, okay, sounds like there's a little weakness in the back. If there's anything weak in the back and things are overly tight and strong in the front from your pressing movements, that's the first place to start. You want to do like a 2-to-1 ratio of pulling to pushing. Okay. You want to be doing more pulling. You want to get mobility in the subscap and strengthen all of these upper back muscles if you want to have healthier, more bulletproof shoulders. That being said, also one of the most effective things that I've done to solve most of my shoulder issues, including others, is switching from being a side sleeper to a back sleeper. Basically, just fixes everything, right? Especially when you get bigger and you have more muscle on your frame, that's going to be more and more of an issue as you get bigger in your upper body, right? So it's weird because it's a comfort thing and it's kind of uncomfortable and it might affect your sleep at first, but just kind of pushing through and focusing on sleeping on your back is literally one of the best things you can do for your shoulders. And then really trying to address any of those imbalances. Basically, every injury comes from, in one part of the body, there's an overly tight tonic muscle. And on the opposite side, there's a passive, loose or lengthened weak muscle, right? In my opinion, you can dig out that tight muscle and stretch it all you want, but if you don't strengthen the loose kind of weak muscle on the opposite side, you're not going to really see the results that you want. And in fact, I've seen people who don't do a lot of stretching and don't do a lot of soft tissue work and just focus on strengthening the right muscles that need strengthening. And it's like their injuries basically disappear and their pain disappears. So that's where I would start, man. Let me just read this real quick again, see if I fully answered that. Yeah, free hanging is another good one too. So if you can hang from a bar every day and try to get your hands closer and closer together and really focus on lengthening your subscapula and letting your shoulders fully extend like that in just 2 minutes every single day. That's also going to solve a lot of issues. Obviously, this isn't like medical advice. If you get, the data doesn't lie. If you go and you get imaging done and it shows a tear or anything like that, that's always going to be better than not knowing. But yeah, I think I answered your question for the most part there. Also, stabilization work. Definitely get into some stabilization work. This will also bulletproof your spine and your back. If you're walking every single day with one weight overhead, with the shoulder kind of up and out like this. And then you can even hold another weight on your other side, just 50 yards back and forth, switch sides. That's going to be really good. And then again, pulling from every angle that you can on a horizontal plane. So face pulls, rows, rear delt flies, external rotations, all of those things to really, really bulletproof the muscles in the back. Yeah, I think that basically answers your question there. So if something else comes to me, I'll reach out to you since you're in the group, guys. And if you're not in the group, guys, just know that I answer these questions in the group, and we can, I can get into a little bit more depth. That's an interest to you, then hit me up, and I'll invite you. All right. Any other questions? Back. My internet just shut off. All right. I don't know what I said last or where I got cut off, but I'm going to just carry on. I didn't see any other questions in the group. Is that you, Bryn? I don't know if I cut off before I asked, but for whatever reason, it says Facebook user on this StreamYard thing, and I can't see your name. So anyways, let me know if you got more questions, if that is you, man. And we can work on that so you can get in it and not be taking, one step back for every 2 steps forward. That is a big barrier for growth often when those injuries creep up, and it sucks. So hopefully that helps. Okay, I think that's it for questions. So just a quick recap. Stress is a massive barrier for weight loss and for overall performance and health, right? But it doesn't have to be, right? It's really about adding that intentional stress and the techniques like I shared today: cold exposure, intermittent fasting, mindset training. And then I would just add a bonus one and say, obviously, movement is really powerful for this. That intentional movement and a minimum effective dose. If you're stressed out, if you got a really busy life and your cortisol levels are really elevated all the time, you do not want to be doing hour-long workouts every single day. Okay, you want to get the minimum effective dose. You want to do just enough to get a stimulus to turn on those muscles and promote growth, and then make sure that you're scaling recoverability. Make sure that the recoverability is much higher than the intentional stress. So just short bursts of stress intentionally are what really help with your overall stress response. Okay, and remember, like I said too, it's really the mindset bit is so important. Right? If you can embrace stress and see it as a challenge rather than a threat, the data does show that that's probably one of the most effective things you can do to handle it, right? And it's important to push ourselves, right, and do these intentional things, but it's also important to prioritize rest and recovery as well, right? You do want to try to mitigate stress in the body and in the mind as much as possible. So if you can kind of do a little bit of an environmental audit or look at your schedule and just say like, okay, where is there time where I can kind of take a step back and just breathe and relax? And where can I intentionally do that rather than filling it with things like, watching TV that are fruitless, that don't really actually help us turn off? That's also something you want to be really focused on, right? Okay. So again, if you're watching the recording and you want to do a deeper dive, this is just an introduction to these topics, guys. I just want to give you as much kind of quick hits and things that you can take away. If you want to do a deeper dive and you want to get, you know, the kind of step-by-step in-depth approach, I'm going to drop a link in the comments below where you can join my newsletter, where I drop a lot of, you know, value-added tips and hacks and things throughout the week. But every Saturday I do a follow-up article that's a little bit more in depth, following what we talked about in these lives. Right. And again, that's kind of like the step-by-step approach. I also like to, you know, share links of gadgets and workout implements and these types of things. So feel free to check that out. I'll drop that in the links on the recording. And if you need any support or guidance along the way, you know, don't hesitate, reach out, hit me up. I'm always here to help. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.